what's the latest? Like,
how am I? Well, I haven't changed. I still have a chat, so we're gonna get into it. We'll chop it up. How I am? I'm good. I am in a place of reflection, in a place of just complete acceptance of everything that is, that was, that is yet to be.
Excellent. So welcome to the podcast. This is Not Your Everyday Podcast. I'm with Kiks here, long-time friend from university. Trust. And we go way back. But I'll let her explain who she is. But just to introduce the podcast, you know what it is. It's about moments of growth. The moment that you decided to level up, the moment you decided to grow beyond your everyday without permission, without the need to ask for permission. You just did it. And we're exploring that moment, like, and how you transitioned. Because quite often we don't, we see the success, but we don't see the behind the scenes. And I want to kind of bring that to life so people who are the everyday people can feel inspired by people who are transforming their lives, who are normal people, and they're making a difference. So we're just trying to explore more about those moments so people feel that they can do it too. So if we can get right into it, if that's all right with you. Cool.
No.
So let's just start with the beginning. What's your name? What do you do? So people who don't know who you are, they can understand what you do. So what's your name and what do you do?
My name is Kiks Katika. I am a movement artist. I am also a spiritual therapist. I'm a safe space facilitator. I'm a lover. I'm a sister. I'm a friend. I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. That's who I am.
Amazing. Thank you. And let's start off with, why I brought you on here, because you've got an amazing story. And I want you to share it. I don't want to kind of give it away. I want to use your own words to explain, where you've come from to where you are now. So just explain to people where you are now, and then we'll go back to like where it all started. So what is the success? What is the highlight so far in the last couple of years?
You said you want my CV. You want the CV. All right, cool. I've done a lot. I have done a lot. Okay, so right now I'm a movement artist, but I've also been a movement artist within films. I have 2 movies that are coming out this year, Sha. We don't know, Corona Day. So we don't know. But one of them is a Christmas film. It will be out on Netflix, and it's called Jingle Jangle. And the other one is Everybody Loves Jamie. It's currently a West End show in the West End, but they're making a UK film for it, and I don't know when that will be out. So I've been in movies. I've worked with brands like Adidas. I have worked with artists like Stefan Don, Dua Lipa, Mr. Easy, Stormzy, Burna Boy. The list goes on. It's been 4 years of a career, but a lot of accomplishments, and I'm actually very bad at doing this. So let me tell you all the things I've done, because I do them quite organically. I choose them quite organically, but I guess a pivotal moment I could say is I was in Aladdin, and I got to work with the OG that is Will Smith, and we got to have the most beautiful intellectual conversations, very, very spiritual and very aligning. And though everybody else is like, oh, I met Will Smith, I was like, oh, I talked about life and faith with Will Smith. That's where I was at, and that's a man that we know who he is in our community. And I got to have some real overstanding conversations with him. And he taught me something that was very pivotal in my life, which was just be who you are, be unapologetic about who you are. And when you are on your come up, so to speak, keep people with you that resonate with your spirit. Don't forget, just don't forget any of that, So for me, I think that was one of my most potent moments, because these are beings that I was watching on TV, all of these beings that I'm even speaking of and working with now and have very potent relationships with. Another moment would have been, I spoke on a panel. So that's my career, the things I've done within being a movement artist. But within being a safe space facilitator, I got to meet a woman that I resonate so highly with, and she's become a sister queen of mine, Michaela Cole. Some of you know her from Chewing Gum and Black Earth Rising and all of these shows. We spoke on the same panel at a wellness event for Black women. And we were upstairs talking for 2 hours before we got to sit on the panel anyway. So we connected on a very deep level. And by the time we were on the panel, we were like bare feet and holding each other's hands and like caressing. Like, it was just such a beautiful moment, you know. And life has shown me that all these people that I'm drawn to, regardless of them seeming like celebrities or them having a whole other status within society, there's been such a beautiful humanity about them. They've had really raw and truthful life experiences. Like, they're us in just a different place in life, you know. And I'm grateful to have met these beings across the short 4 years of my career, you know, that have really impacted me. And some of them I can now say are my very close friends and family, you know. So I give thanks for the movement part of me, that I was led to movement as a form of healing anyway. And I just give thanks for the doors it's opened and the things I've been able to do with it, you know. I'm grateful.
Perfect. And you forgot to mention you've been on X Factor, right? Or was it?
I have been on it. I mean, that was my first job. So the reason why I didn't mention X Factor, because we can get into the tea. The reason I didn't mention X Factor, is because it was my first job, and though I was grateful because I got to work with a choreographer that I've been watching since I was a child. Literally, he's the one who did a Britney Spears "Slave for You" video, and every little girl at one point was like in her mirror doing the routine. Like, Brian Friedman was it, you know. So that was my first audition, my first casting. I'd only been training for 10 months. I quit my job in August 2015, July 2015. That's when the school term ends. And September 2015, I began training full time as a dancer. I was just like, I'm just gonna throw myself in. Whatever happens, happens, you know. And fast forward to a year later, I walked into this audition, my first audition of my life. After 12 hours, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., I booked the job. And that was the beginning of my career. And it was an incredible moment because this man fell in love with me. And I was like, if you only knew how I loved you, you know? And that just, people ask me all the time, what was that moment for you? Like, how? Because so many, X Factor is one of the most grueling auditions. Like, how it is for the singers, it's exactly how it is for the dancers. It's intense, you know? 12 hours, you know, in the cold. 12 hours. It's real.
Dancing in it as a backup dancer, right?
Yeah. And I say to people all the time, I just told myself that I'm going there to celebrate myself. I'm going there to have a good time. I've worked hard. I had nothing to lose. I was like, if they tell me no, they tell me no, but I'm going to go there and be everything that I am. Not for them, for me, because I didn't cry all those tears and go all those days without eating, trying to pay my training for this runway house for me not to be present in that moment. And honestly, I honestly think that's what shifted me and continues to shift me through all of the spaces in my career. Not that I don't take no for an answer, but I will not be the one to tell myself no.
Exactly.
No, I will not be the person to tell myself no. I would tell, if I want it and I desire it. I'm careful with the idea of wanting, because to want it is almost like assume you can't obtain it. So you keep pushing that away from you energetically. But if I desire it, within, and it's coming from a spiritual place as opposed to a superficial place, I will always tell myself I can do it. Any word that comes after I is a command. And I just told myself that day, I can do this. And I did it, you know, and I give thanks.
So let's talk about that moment of growth. So you quit your job and you decided to go all out into your career and dancing and like, you know, no going back basically. And that's the moment that I want to explore, like the feeling, the why you did it, you know, how you, like, what made you realize that it was possible. So just talk me through briefly, because we'll ask questions.
Okay.
Like how did that moment of quitting make you feel? Why did you quit? How did you know it would work out, or you didn't know it would work out? Talk to me about that moment, because people are in those positions right now.
Yeah. So for me, it was mine. I have to tell you the backstory before I get there. It was I was going through an emotional breakdown at the time. I was doing what you do when you graduate uni. You go, you apply for a job, you know, you work for like trash pay for a little while, you know, and then after that, you know, you figure out a way to like elevate and do all of these things. And I just realized that in the midst of my pain, doing things that added more pain to it didn't seem sensible to me. Like, though I loved the job that I was doing, it wasn't awakening all of the parts of me. It was only awakening some of the parts of me. And I was like, surely there has to be a way to live your life where you can live wholesomely with all of you and not just parts of you, you know? So this was going on for a while, because I started the job in 2014, 2015. So this is going on for a while in my head. And it got to the point as I was having all of these breakdowns, I had a sister queen at the time who was supporting me through that, you know? And she was like, what is it that helps you to breathe a little easier in the day, at night. And everyone had known this about me since I was at uni. I loved to move, I loved to dance, but I'd never trained. You know, I just did things and choreographed things for showcases at our university. So I was like, I love to move. Movement allows my spirit to speak words that my mouth has not yet found the language for. As a victim of, I'm not a victim, once upon a time I was a victim of a lot of abuse, physically, sexually, mentally, emotionally. You know, for me, I hadn't found the words to express all of that or even communicate through that, and movement allowed me to do that. So towards the end of the school term, I started having these thoughts of like, what happens if I just throw myself into the deep end, you know? And I was talking about these things to my colleagues. Okay, so let me just break this down. Don't talk to people about stuff who don't really do the things for themselves anyway, you know? So I was telling my colleagues what I wanted to do, and they were all like, you know, you're not going to be able to make it, it's too late. Because I think at the time I was 24, like, you're not going to be able to make it, it's too late for you. One guy genuinely like mocked me, and he was like, who do you think you are to just switch your career at 24? And I was like, oh, you know, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But in the same breath, something deep in my womb was like, this is their narrative, not yours. You know, it was a very small, very small voice, very small and tiny, but some way the vibrations of that voice carried up to my prefrontal mind, you know, and was like, just try, you know, you have nothing to lose, other than rent and bills and food, but you got nothing to lose, you know. So come the end of the term, I handed in my notice to the teacher, petrified, absolutely petrified. It was literally a whim thing. I typed it up the night before, and I was like, I'm just gonna hand it in the next day. I'm just gonna do it. And I went into the school and I handed it in the next day, and they were like, wow, our children are really gonna miss you. You're one of the most pivotal like beings we've ever had. And I was just like, thank you so much. But I just need to do this for myself, you know. So fast forward, come September, I applied for this program called Runway House. It was only run on particular days of the week, so it wasn't like a dance school per se. And I'd observed them the February that year before I handed in my notice. Move It is a Comic-Con for dancers, so to speak. Yeah. So I'd attended Move It that February 2015, and I'd seen on the stage these amazing groups, these amazing performers. I remember I went with Chioma. And we were like, what the heck? She's not even a dancer, she's an actor. So she was like just blown away by this like massive show of everythingness in this building. And I saw this company perform Runway House, and I saw Black women, I saw white women, I saw just life in the feminine body, or just on the stage living their best life. And I was like, I want to do this. I need to feel this. And that was also like a moment that was in the back of my mind, you know, through all of my decisions from February all the way till July when I handed in my notice. I wanted to see if I could experience a piece of that. So I emailed Runway House, and I was just like, how do I go about applying for this training on the program? And the woman who runs the program, Minnie Willits, told me how to go about it, you know. So I applied for the Wednesday and the Thursday program, which were the program one is all like commercial, the hip hop, all of those things that you would see in music videos or you would see in films or on the Grammys and shows like that. That I applied for the Thursday program, which is program 3, which was all the skills like house, popping, locking, Vogue, all of these breaking, all of these foundational styles that would teach me awareness of my body, because choreography doesn't teach you awareness of your body. Choreography teaches you how to retain information and regurgitate it in a way that is you, essentially. But I needed to understand who I was, who my voice was within all of that. And I did that consistently. Every Wednesday and every Thursday, I did that consistently for a year. And in that space, I met my current housemate, Alu, who I'm also in a crew with her. She is also my agent. She books me for a lot of things, you know. But I met her in that space, and she invited me to join her crew. And I was like, So, you know, I joined the crew. So all of this time, I'm still living in Essex, and I'm commuting into London on Wednesdays, on Thursdays, on Sundays. And around that, I had to get a job that I could work to pay my bills and my rent. But I knew that I wouldn't be able to do that in Colchester. So I also got a full-time job. Wow. Whilst also full-time training, where I had to come into London and work as a compliance officer at a healthcare company in Liverpool Street. And I would finish work at 5:30. Rehearsals will start at 6. I would finish work at 5:30. I would sprint through rush hour, my goodness, to get to Waterloo, sprint to the building, you know, get there for 6 o'clock on the dot. So I would miss warm up, but I just had to warm up my run, you know? So, you know, I missed warm up. I'd start and I'd be training till 10:30 at night. Then you'd have to cool down, have a conversation with whoever taught last. I would travel back to Stratford, get a train back to Colchester. I'd get home around like 1 o'clock in the morning. I would stretch so I'm not frazzed the next day. I would stretch. I would take myself to bed, wake up at 6:30 the next morning, make sure that I'm training, get my body fit, eat my breakfast, and then go to work and then repeat. And this was my life for a year. I think this might have been the year I really learned how to be a loner, because I literally spoke to no one. I just trained and I worked and I trained and I worked and I trained and I worked. And there were only a handful of people that saw that process, you know? And for me, after that year of training, or it wasn't even a year, it was like 10 months of training, to then get to that moment of going to the audition. By that point, I'd already gone through so many ebbs and flows. I'd already gone through so many moments of quitting. Like, I really wanted to quit the dance thing. I was really like, I can't. A month into it, imagine never having trained and taking your first dance class. Stress. Like, you're teaching me choreography. I don't know what 5, 6, 7, 8 is. I don't know how to retain 4/8 of choreography. I don't know how to retain 2 minutes of choreography. I don't know how to do that. I don't know what that is, you know. People think, oh, I have a good brain, so if I can memorize books, I can That's not how that works, you know? So for the first month of training, I hated it because I'm not used to not being good at something. I hated it. I really didn't like it. There were a lot of college kids who were very like cliquey with each other. There were a lot of dancers who already knew each other, but luckily there were still a lot of beings in the space that were just there to train and love and expand, you know? And I'm so thankful at the time when I joined the program, because those beings got me through it. Because even the teacher at one point, I walked out of one rehearsal, and she came outside and she got me and she was like, what's up? And I was like, I can't do this. I'm done. And she was like, done doing what? You know, you haven't tried to your fullest extent. So why are you quitting now? It's like, if you fall down 7 times, stand up 8, you know, just little moments, little prophecies like that came into my life. So I can't say that it was all me and my perseverance and I quit my job and I went and I got through it and no one supported me through that. It wasn't that. Like, God literally spoke through so many different beings at so many different times, because the amount of breakdowns in that year were insane. It's just, I had to trust that there was something more. I had to trust that I wasn't just intended to live my life in one spectrum. I had so many gifts, so why did I have to shut down all of that for one? It didn't make any sense to me, and I just had to keep trying until the doors opened. And I was listening to like motivational speeches from like Will Smith and T.D. Jakes and who's the other brother? Tyler Perry, Maya Angelou, all of these beings that have been through some stuff. You know, Maya was a pivotal one at that point in my life. Maya Angelou had been through so much she started off as a dancer as well, you know, from being raped to being abused to being silenced to being like selectively mute, all of these things that had happened to her in childhood. And this woman still ended up being like one of the most pivotal beings in our reality, and her soul rests in light. Spoke at an inauguration. She was a civil rights activist. Like so many of these things that started from her movement portal, and through movement she found a healing that just expanded her and allowed her to flourish. And I just wanted to see, you know. And that's it. That's the story. Probably gonna ramble a lot in this, but yeah.
Yeah, no. So what I took that from that is that you quit your job, and because you had a small voice in you that said you can do it, you can reach your dreams, you can go for it. And essentially that got you to a level of confidence that made you kind of believe in yourself that you can do it. And then the successes started coming, I imagine. You started getting booked for jobs and auditions and more like live performance shows, etc. Is that what happened once you got that contact?
Yeah, for me, I wouldn't even say it was a whole confidence birth moment and then everything flowed from that. I think my confidence came because I moved to London the day before my first audition. I moved to London the night before. I hadn't even unpacked. Nothing had been done. I wasn't going to go to that audition. That's what I'm saying. Like, in moments, like, listen to the beings that are speaking to you and the words that they're saying. I hadn't unpacked. I was in my front room. Everything was everywhere. And my housemate was like, oh, you know, the X Factor, the audition is tomorrow. And I was like, okay. And she was like, are you going to go? And I was like, girl, I have nothing. I don't have my headshot. I have nothing. And she was like, just try. So that morning I ran to go get headshot. I ran to go do things. And if I hadn't listened to spirit speaking through people, I wouldn't be here, you know. And in that moment, that's how the confidence builds. Just listening to spirit. Yes, believe in your talent, but listen. You have to listen innately. Listen to yourself. Listen to those that you trust. I'm not saying live your life according to other people's opinions, but this idea of separation consciousness is a myth. It's a myth that keeps killing us. You know, if we understand that, yes, we're having our own individual experience, but so is everybody else, and they have gems to also share with you. You can also expand faster. Like, no man is an island. If you were intended to be an island, you would just congeal in the gutter, come out and do your own thing and go back into the gutter. But that's not how that works, you know. Yeah.
So let's kind of step back now, because we've spoken about the successes, where you've been, how you got there, that moment of growth where you quit your job. Now, for context, so people can understand how, like, because what you've done is amazing, and you haven't even explained it yet. But the Kiks before university, the Kiks before dancing, like, are you happy to go into that?
I'm happy to go into that.
So that people understand the levels, because, like, yeah, I want people to, I don't want them to just see you as, okay, you went to university and then you got an audition and that was it. There was a whole bunch of other things that happened before that.
I just want to make sure you were ready for all that. I didn't want to jump into that. When you're ready for that, you gotta ask that question, you know.
I'm ready. It's just that I don't want you to, like, I'm trying to get people to understand who you were in the past, but not like so that they can take things from it. So if you can, like, quite briefly, like a couple of minutes, just talk about the things that your lowest points, basically. And
we can do that. For starters, I would say that they were my lowest points. They were my greatest teachers.
Yeah.
And that's how I choose to see them now. I think pain is an incredible teacher. I don't believe it's the only one, and that's where our world falls short. So I was, prior to even leaving Nigeria, I left Nigeria when I was 9. I experienced a lot of emotional abuse. I experienced a lot of domestic abuse between my father and my mother. I also was sexually abused by the caregivers that were being hired by my parents to look after me. I left Nigeria with all this in my head that I didn't speak to anyone when I was about 9, went to Miami. And though I've always excelled in books, like, books have always been my thing. You know, my father was an educator, so books and art and music and everything has always been my thing. But that's why I always say intellect isn't the only road. You have to merge it with emotional and spiritual to really soar. So intellectually, I was doing great. I was in the gifted program. I got to go to NASA and all of these beautiful things because I was doing so well in science, but inside I was crumbling, you know. They tried to get me a therapist, but I wasn't willing to speak. So I was suicidal at that time in my life. So they had to contact my mother, and I had to, you know, come back to Nigeria after being there for, like, I think 4 or 5 years. I don't even know at this point. Anyway, I had to go back to Nigeria. And then in going back to Nigeria, because I was so advanced, my parents knew that being in Nigeria wasn't the one for me. So they sent me to England to go through another many years of trash. But it's okay. Love and healing. I came here when I was 12. When I say here, I mean Newcastle, up north. And I was living with my mother's sister and her partner at the time, and she was incredibly abusive. So she kept me there as a child slave for 4 years, which I'm not going to go into because that's really sad for a lot of people to hear. But I escaped, right away at 16. I was homeless for a little while. But the social services saw that they couldn't put me in spaces that were detrimental to my mental health, because though I'd gone through a lot, I was still quite sturdy up top, seemingly sturdy up top, you know. And I had this conversation with my social worker. I was like, if you put me in a YMCA with everybody who's doing drugs and having kids and doing all these things, you're going to push me into that lifestyle. And I was like, I'm not there. So I was like, please put me somewhere that it can be beneficial for my mental health. So I ended up paying chicken change, now that I think about it, for a room at the top of a bed and breakfast. At this point, I was 16, 17. Paying for this room at the top of a B&B, paying rent to the owners of the B&B. I think the government was helping me with like £30 a week, something like that. I had to work. I had to quit sixth form at first, but I took myself back to sixth form because being homeless and going to college, I just couldn't. So I had to quit sixth form and go back the following year. Worked my butt off in sixth form, found myself a job, with a gentleman who ran a theater company at the time. And that's where I met Jade from Little Mix. And she actually remembered me. She messaged me like 2 months ago, and she was like, thank you so much for your lessons and like your blessings at a time in life when I just didn't know anything. And I was like, you're a whole like being you're like in the top girl band. Like, how do you remember me? Like, that's what I mean. When spirit speaks, it's crazy. Anyway, so Jade was in this company, and I was dance teacher at the company at the time, making a little bit of change to help myself get by. And then I eventually got my A-levels and decided I wanted to move far away from Newcastle. I hadn't gone to any of the opening days at Essex University. I had literally been to nowhere, but I knew that Essex had accepted me, and I was in Newcastle and I wanted to get out. So I just went on the internet, I booked a van, booked the man, packed all my stuff up, went for viewings of a house literally 2 days before uni started. I don't think you actually even know this. I don't think I told you this. 2 days before uni started, I jumped on a train from Newcastle. Train? Who had the money for train? Coach. I jumped on a coach from Newcastle to London to try and see this house. Viewed the first one, and the guy was like, oh, I'm too attracted to you, so you can't live with me. And I was like, right. Went back to Newcastle, booked another viewing, came back, and the house I found the day before we moved, went back to Newcastle, booked this van, like I already said, jumped in a van and literally moved myself to Colchester. And the next day I just went to the university blind as a bat, not knowing anything, not seeing anything. And that was where I guess my new chapter started. And then everything is what it is. And the person I was at uni, like I said at the beginning of this, was a young woman who had escaped all of these things, hadn't processed, hadn't dealt, just kept on going because I just refused. I refused because everyone in my life was waiting for me to fail at the time. Everyone was like, oh, she's going to be pregnant. She's going to be this, she's going to be that. Because I've always been this person, but just not as calm, you should say. I've always been silly and playful and all of these things. And they just didn't see me. They saw the shadows of me. So I just didn't want to prove them right. So I was just like, I'm going to do my own thing all the time, you know, but getting to uni, I'm thankful for the people that God placed in my life at the time. God placed them in my life because though I did a lot of things that I'm not ashamed of, but I don't stand with anymore. I had to go through that to get to this version of me, and I give thanks. But the Kiks at uni was, something else. Something else. You know, but we give thanks.
So yeah. What was, thank you for sharing that. I know it's quite tough going back into the past and you've made that transformation. What was the thing that you had, like the fear that you had to overcome? Like, because there was many traumas, there was many fears, there's many situations that you've been in. How did you actually overcome it? Like, was it just that you were very resilient, you're very smart? Like, what was the skill that you had that made you get through that? Because some people can't survive the child labor, some people can't survive the molestering or all the different things that happen. Like, what was it? Sorry?
How did I'm thinking so I can answer you. The pain that I'd been through had made me very thick-skinned, very, very thick-skinned. But in the midst of that being thick-skinned, I've always had angels, even if they didn't know they were angels by my side, even if they didn't know the words they were speaking to me. I've always, always had angels in my life who would just tell me the real, you know. That's one. Another skill I had was just self-reflection. I've just never been one for self-deception. Even in the midst of my pain, I always had to be able to look in the mirror and be like, do you stand by the decision that you've just made? Do you stand? And at the time, obviously I did, but moving forward, obviously I haven't. But I've always been one to look at myself and really be real with myself and ask myself the questions of like, are you happy? Is this you? Is this a version of you? Like, I've never been one to BS myself. Just tell myself what it is and just let that be that, because you can't go around your life blind, you know? So yes, my resilience helped. I also had angels in my life that were speaking spirit to me, and I just had to be real all the times. I had to be able to look at my reflection and just question myself, you know? And in questioning myself so vividly and so clearly every time I reached this version of me. So the way I question myself now isn't the way I question myself then, but the way I will question myself now isn't the way I question myself in my next stage of becoming. So just always ask yourself the tough questions, because some people won't do that for you, you know?
So how do you define success now in your life? Now, given you've had different variations of success and you're still on your way, What does success look like for you now?
Cultivating the reality that I want, that I desire. You know, like I said, I'm very much known in my industry of being the person that you can't. I don't like. It's a massive thing that I'm this bald-headed African-faced being that's just on people's screens. You know, for the most part, when you see Black women on TV, they're in weaves, they're in contour for the gods. Not disrespecting my sisters who do that, because we were doing this long before colonization, but there's a very particular way of presenting yourself. Back in the day, now it's beautiful to be bald-headed and Black, you know. But I'm very much known as being just me, unapologetically me. I am that person where Stormzy's walking into rehearsal and I'm burning sage in the corner and he's just like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, Maggie. Like, you know, I do me at all times. You know, I don't alter myself depending on my environment. You take me as I am or you don't, and that's okay. I'll take no offense anyway. So for me, it's just, success is just being me in all the spaces unapologetically. I feel like that's helped me get to this point in my career. It will help me get to the next point in my career. Cultivating me is what I deem to be successful. Cultivating we. So once I win, I share that win, you know?
So you mentioned about, like, you're in a space where it's very visual. So people look at your face, they look at your dance, your moves.
Yeah.
You know, you're in entertainment, and you're a Black woman, bald-headed, as you said. How does it make you feel being that person when, you know, society says that you're like, long hair, light skin, that's what we want, but you're stepping into the space saying, no, like, this is who I am, and this is what I can offer. How have you managed that? How have you been able to be yourself when, you know, society might be saying other things, or we're moving to an age where, you know, like, Black is beautiful? Like, how do you cope with that?
So for me, firstly, I call out the beings that are perpetuating white standards of beauty. I've called out agents before who have sent me a brief and been like, can you wear a weave for this? No, I can't. I can wear an afro that looks like it can grow from my scalp. I can't wear a weave for you, baby. And I've called them out on this, you know, and that was the first and last time he ever did that. You know, I use my voice. It doesn't matter. That's why I might not be the dancer you see working all the time, but when I do work, you go know I'm there. You know, I use my voice. How do I articulate that? I live in my lifestyle, so it's not a presentation. Like I said, it's successful for me to be me, wholesomely me at all time. This is who I am. Like right now, I'm sipping tea. I have my gong bowl and my sage and my Palo Santo. Like it's not a front. Like this is who I am. Like I love my plants. Like I am a holistic woman of the earth. I'm a wild woman of the earth. You know, and when you are something wholesomely, it leaves less room for questions or doubt from people. So when I step into a space being who I am, you can't ask me to alter this because this is who I am. Like you see it, you feel it, you smell it, you taste it. Like I smell of herbs. I'm immersed in my lifestyle. I'm immersed in Africa. I'm immersed in Akebuland, which is the original name for Africa. This is my walk of life. I would do this whether I was being paid to or not.
How did you get comfortable with yourself?
I spent enough time looking in the mirror.
Okay.
I looked at myself. I told myself all things that I didn't like. You know, it was hard. It was hard. It was so hard. I cried my tears. Let me tell you something. If anybody tells you that, oh, don't revel in the low. Every emotion needs time to be honored. Every single emotion needs time to be honored. I honored those emotions. I screamed my pain. You know, I yelled. I spent days, months in my cave. And equally, I spent time flourishing. I got comfortable by surrendering. I told myself it is important to surrender and not surrender your mind in that, like, you know, let whatever comes to you come to you and let somebody else dictate your life, but surrender and stop fighting this invisible enemy. Your shadow is not your enemy. It's just a part of your light that's holding all the baggage. The minute you learn to look at that part of yourself and give it love, everything becomes a little bit more easier, you know? So I just learned to look at my shadow, look at my darkness as teachers, as showing me the way, you know?
So what would you say to women out there, and men as well, I guess, who are struggling with self-esteem, struggling with low confidence? Like, what advice would you give them? What tip?
Several. I'll start with get yourself a therapist. Therapy is healthy. If I wasn't so good at being my own therapist, I would have a therapist. You know, I'm blessed that I have a tribe of beings around me, men, women, and non-binary that just are so wholesome and holistic in their lifestyles that they are my therapists, you know, without even meaning to be, but I'm so wholesomely mine. Find yourself a therapist. Therapy is important, you know. Also find faith. You didn't just come here to like get a 9-to-5 job, ascend to CEO and die. And you think that's your legacy. Like there is more to life. Balance your intellectual with your spiritual and your emotional. Like you have to balance them all. I always say to people, I'm a spiritual being, but I'm also a scientific being. Science and spirit are two sides of the same coin. If you don't believe me, read, read something. Gets me to my third point. Read. You have to educate your mind. Reading was something that was illegal for us back in the day. Now we have the access to books. If you don't even like picking up book, my friend, Google is your best friend. Or if you don't like Google, DuckDuckGo, because that's private. So you can look at whatever you want. You know, read, educate your mind, expand your mind, look at things from different realities. You know, the history books that were shown in schools give us one aspect of the history. But if you look at all of the story, you will see that that book is a lie. So expand your consciousness by looking at all the variants in the story. And that's including your own. Like if you're going through self-growth, like I was looking at myself, but I had to look at myself from all the perspectives. My perspective was important. The perspective of me as a child was important. How my parents viewed me, how my tribe, my sisters, my brothers, my people viewed me. All of these perspectives in one helped me understand who I was. Because sometimes disassociation, when you're not in a healthy mental space, is a real thing. You disassociate from who you are, you disassociate from your emotions. It's a real thing, you know. So you have to learn how to, like, when you can't see yourself, what are the other mediums you can use to see yourself? Music, affirmations, writing, nature being the most potent one. Nature is, you came from dust, you will return to dust. No matter if you're having a hard day, just take off your shoes. I promise you, walk on some grass and just take a couple of deep breaths. Whatever you're stressing about is not going to be so deep after 5 minutes. You know, take the time.
Oh, thank you. Last couple of questions. What advice would you give your younger self?
Okay. This question. Trust yourself. Trust yourself. You're born knowing everything. You just forget. So we think we're here to learn, but we're here to remember. So trust yourself. You have all the answers you need, like all of them. Every time I go through something, I look within now, I speak to spirit. I speak to that part of me that is connected to everything in the world, everything in the universe. And I listen. Oh, I listen. I train myself to listen, and I hear my answers. You have everything inside you. So I would tell my younger self, and I tell her quite frequently when we talk, to just trust.
Powerful. 3 practical tips for personal growth. So when I mean personal growth without permission, I mean, you know, not waiting for people to give you that permission. You going out there and doing it yourself. So what practical tips for personal growth? Maybe three practical tips to get going, basically.
Okay. Don't be scared to take the first step. Just jump. Just fling yourself off the bridge. Just jump. I think that's so important because you don't know what's gonna happen. So take the first step. Don't be scared of no's. There will be a lot of no's, but in the midst of those no's, there will be yeses. And even in the midst of those yeses, you have to then decipher which yes is for you, because not every yes is for you. Not every blessing that comes your way is for you. You have to learn to pick who do you want to be. And we are here to figure out who we are in relation to everything around us. That's why we live in a world of relativity. So who do I want to be in relation to this thing that is right in front of me? That is how I make my decisions. Yeah. So don't be scared of your no's, and don't jump into every yes. It would be the second one. And thirdly, spend time in spirit, man. spend time in spirit. I can't stress that enough. Spend time in spirit. Your spirit knows exactly what you want, even if your mouth has not found the language for it yet, even if your brain has not picked what career you want to go into, even if all of these worldly things haven't fallen into your lap, your spirit knows. And the more you spend time in spirit, the more you will overstand and the more you will expand.
Amazing, amazing. Any books? Do you have any books that people you recommend? Maybe one or two books for your personal growth?
My favorite one is Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. It is an incredible book for transformation. He chose to write it from a point of view that was, you can see it as fiction, but I didn't see it as fiction, and here we are. I implemented a lot of these lessons in the book, and it radically changed my life. So Celestine Prophecy. And one that I'm currently reading right now is a 3-part book. It is Conversations with God. I'm currently on book 2. And again, this is not for like, oh, if you're a spiritual nut and all of these things. Like, this is, if you read it, it's talking about government, politics, lifestyles, human race, everything is in that book, Conversations with God. It's powerful. But I know you didn't ask me for a third one, but those 2 are white men. So I'm going to recommend a Black woman. Yeah. Maya Angelou, Dr. Maya Angelou, the great Letter to My Daughter. Especially for beings in a female body. It's very important to understand this thing called our womb. It's very, very important.
Thank you so much for joining the podcast. Interview was awesome. I challenge everyone to listen back and listen to the gems that Kiks was mentioning, right from the successes to the triumphs to the tribulations, and I took a lot from it, and I'm hoping everybody else did as well. Thank you, Kiks, for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, and here's a lecture so you know it's real.
Kiks, man. Yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So